technical assistance in terms of strengthening the capacity of the consumer organizations to impact the legislative process?
Yes, technical assistance, but also, as I said, organizational assistance in organizational capacity building.
Mm-hmm. You had mentioned the financial sector in particular. What kinds of areas would the focus on the financial sector take? Are there particular areas that Consumer International, which you represent, is concerned about in terms of the operations of the financial services sector?
Well, as Consumers International, we are concerned about a lot that is happening these days in the financial sector, and especially on the macro level. Of course, we have been very concerned since late last year, and
yes.
we have been making submissions to the OECD. We have been commenting on the Stiglitz report to the UN in relation to reforming of the financial sector, but that is the macro level. Now, this project, of course, in the Caribbean context, will not focus so much on those aspects, but more on the link between the service providers, the banks, and the customer, and the fact that it's important that banks should be transparent in the fees that they're charging. Mm-hmm. They should be transparent in the small print in the contracts, that people know what they're signing up to, and so that people can be very much aware of what the relation with the bank will mean for them. Mm-hmm. And this is particularly interesting because every year on the 15th of March there's World Consumer Rights Day.
Yes.
Now 15th of March 2010 will be focusing on financial services. So this project is in the context of that event, in which there will be a global cry for a global rally for accountability for
transparency.
People, transparency, and people under the title "Our Money, Our Rights," wanting to make sure that in all the individual countries where Consumer International is working, through our members, that we can hope to bring about change towards more transparency.
So matters of bank charges would be addressed.
Yes,
there are legitimate areas
but
to
of
be
course,
examined.
Since it's financial services, every country has got its own peculiarities. So there may be countries in Africa where microcredit schemes are the most important things. Other countries, like in Jamaica or like in Europe, it's the formal banking system. What is also a point of concern is about, as you mentioned, transparency and accountability, but also the fact that sometimes...
Let's take a break at this point and we come back to talk about the accountability and transparency issues. Joost Martens is the president of Consumer International, which is headquartered in London, and he is here to participate in a seminar to do with the promotion of consumer protection, the Caribbean project, a project which involves 3 Caribbean countries, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, and Barbados. We talk to him more about some of the issues having to do with this project when we come back from this break.
I think our rights are protected. I think the problem is that we are not very aware of what our rights are, and I think that's the weakness in the system.
Things are relatively good in terms of pricing. I mean, for instance, the Minister of Trade, Carl Samuda, has allowed for the publishing of certain information on prices in the Daily Gleaner, so people know where to get cheaper goods as opposed to more expensive goods.
We have a Consumer Affairs Commission who advocates for the consumer. So if we have grouses, we report them to the Consumer Affairs Commission, and they deal with them promptly.
Still believe that more can be done. I think maybe the monitoring aspect in terms of certain things are not followed through.
We have many institutions that are supposed to protect our rights, Consumer Affairs Commission, OUR, you name it. But I think the issue is that Jamaicans as a whole don't take advantage of these institutions enough. So businesses get away with a lot because we allow them to.
Welcome back to Issues and Answers. The president of Consumer International, Joost Martens, is here with us, and he's talking principally about the promotion of consumer protection in the Caribbean project, quite a mouthful. And he's telling us how that project will benefit Jamaica and the consumer movement here. You had mentioned the critical issues of accountability and transparency, especially in the financial services sector. That's right. We saw what happened in the United States and in other developed countries last year, the implosion which took place, which highlights the need for greater openness. How do you see this project resulting in benefits? What are some of the concrete benefits that could emerge from this project?
Well, perhaps in general terms, the fact that we expect consumer organizations to play a more important role in the dynamics in society. Because we have to realize that industry is powerful, government plays its role, but if consumer organizations don't play their role in protecting the interest of consumers, then the sector of consumers will be disorganized and unprotected. So working on consumer education and creating awareness with the consumers of their rights and of the organizations that can help them fulfill their rights is a very important step. Now, but that's in general terms. In concrete terms, we hope that consumer organizations can be organizations that can demand the banks to be more transparent, more accountable, and be more open. The thing is, I think the banks have to realize that we are in a crisis of trust. People don't trust banks anymore after what has happened. There's a lot of distrust and a lot of lack of confidence, not only towards banks. So if banks want to regain that trust and play a role that they can play in society, they have to be transparent, they have to be accountable. So we hope that this project will contribute to improving the relations of accountability and the relations with the consumers.
And the project will also have positive spin-offs for the banks, because in as much as confidence and trust are increased in the banks, then the banks also will be a part of a virtuous circle. So this benefits the banking sector also.
That's what we can expect, I guess, yes.
Would you say that the consumer movement, Mr. Martens, over the last decade has been losing its power and impact or gaining, as you have seen developments in market-driven economies over the last decade? Where would you see the consumer movement in the whole power scale?
We think that the consumer movement has the capacity to really speak up and be vocal. Consumer International next year will exist for 50 years. We'll have our 50th anniversary next year. And with the globalization of the marketplace, we think that also the consumer movement needs to globalize. And so therefore, Consumer International, we are campaigning on global issues that are of interest to consumers in different parts of the world. So the issue of climate change is an issue in which individual countries or individual consumer organizations can't do anything if it's not in the context of a wider grouping. So that's one of the points. The other point is that Consumer International, as an international organization, we have access to to the UN. We have access to the specialized agencies.
Yes.
We are accredited with the World Health Organization. We are accredited with the OECD in Paris. So we can represent the interests of our members in the different countries by being present and having a voice in